So good morning and welcome everybody. It's an absolute privilege to host you all here today. Now they say that if you want to be the best, you learn from the best. And today, bringing you here down into our area, we're going to introduce you to Mark and Felicity Brough, and they're some of the best in the King Country at what they're doing. And when you talk about trying to balance a business objective against an environmental objective and getting really positive outcomes, that's exactly what they're doing down here in the King Country, and they're doing something really quite special. So huge opportunity for us to learn from some people who are doing something really amazing. So welcome. There's a huge opportunity for us here today to all learn from some people who are doing something really quite special. So we look forward to that. So welcome to the King Country. Welcome to ADRIAN, and welcome to the 2020 Waikato Balanced Farm Environment Awards Supreme Winners Field Day. It's an absolute privilege to have you all here today. My name's Matt Hole, so I get to MC the day today. My role within the awards program is I chair the organising committee in the Waikato, so sort of oversee what's happening, and a bit of a privilege to have you to be here today. Haven't we come a long way? Haven't we come a long way in the last 5 years? We all remember to turn off our phones, don't we, when we go to interviews? Now, haven't we come a long way? You know, if you sat in the Waikato 5 or 10 years ago, there was kind of like that state of denial around the water quality within the region and what was happening regionally in that space. And now, when I go out and do my work, I have the privilege of writing farm environment plans throughout the King Country region. And now when I go out onto the farm, we've got farmers who are absolutely hungry for information about where are the solutions and how do I apply them within my farming system, and who do I go to for information. And so the role of the Balanced Farm Environment Awards in highlighting best practice and showcasing farmers who are doing the right thing and doing it at the absolute highest level is a huge opportunity for our awards program in the next couple of years. And so our challenge is to continue to bring you just really good learning opportunities, and that's what today is all about. It's about showcasing a farm and presenting all the ideas. And so I challenge you today, before you leave, is to ask all the questions you've got going on in your mind. We're going to pick their brains, Mark and Felicity, and I know they've brought with them a support team of, we've got a couple of guys from the council and guys who have been really influential in developing their farm and their farming system. And so they're going to back them up, and we've got a full day of presentations for you today. Now, just before we go, like I say, we've got the videographies here, so yeah, I'll cover off that shortly. But I'm really conscious of the fact that this year with the awards program, we were going to have our big annual awards dinner up in the Don Rollins up at Karapiro, right at the start of lockdown. And we had to pull the pin on that. And what does that mean? That means that our supreme winners this year never got a big round of applause from everybody commending them on just how well they've done. And so, as a kick-off today, and to start the day off, I have the privilege of presenting them with the Supreme Award Winners Trophy for the Waikato. So, to welcome them on behalf of the Waikato and congratulating them as winners of the Supreme Award, I'd like you to put your hands together. So don't show away. So welcome Mark and Felicity, and I just wonder if you'd like to just welcome everybody and tell us a bit about yourself and how you come to be here.
Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you after you've been to the farm what you think before we make any judgments. I hope you enjoy the day, and I'm sure we'll learn a lot from guest speakers Adrian, Bruno and Anna. Between them they've got a hell of a lot of knowledge, and we've certainly learned a lot from them. Good. That's not, doesn't it? I've always had an interest in biodiversity. This comes from a young age. Following my father, who only seemed to have one speech speed, which was flat out through the native bush chasing wild boar and stags. I remember my father cutting scrub on his farm with a slasher and then a chainsaw when they were invented, coming home with lizards in his pockets. To an 8-year-old, these are amazing creatures. How many children get to experience these things these days? Biodiversity is important to us as farmers. We feel we need to know what is on our farm and do everything we can to protect and enhance it. To have biodiversity, we need topsoil. I think that defining moment came for me when I went to a field day run. I think that defining moment came for me when we went to a field day run by Waikato Regional Council and listened to Bala say that it takes roughly 500 years to create an inch of topsoil. I came away thinking that if we don't do something to protect and look after the soil that we have on our farm, we won't be growing any trees, grass, etc. that biodiversity needs to thrive. As you'll see as you walk around a part of our farm, it is still a work in progress. We've been slowly working away at planting and fencing for over 10 years. In the new year, we set ourselves a target of how many trees and identify the areas we'd like to plant. We start fencing in February and March. We spray the spots for trees in May, start planting in June with the idea that all trees are in the ground by mid-July. This is important as it gives the trees time to get established in case of a drought. Roughly 1,000 trees is about all we can do a year comfortably. Obviously, if you're prepared to pay for someone to do the planting, then you can do more. We find poplar poles are the hardest thing to get established. Carrying poles, spade, rabbit and sleeves isn't as much fun as it looks. We like to plant them 1 metre deep rather than the recommended 600 millimetres, as I feel this gives them more stability in the wind and a better chance of survival in a drought. Keeping cattle out of our paddocks and the poles for at least 2 years is important to get them established. I'd like to thank a few people that have helped us along the way. In particular, ADRIAN JEPSON, providing advice, encouragement and funding. Thank you, ADRIAN, it's been terrific. Charlie and Stella Smart for plant advice. You need to go to these guys to get special advice. They know what to plant, where to plant, things like that. It's something we're going to talk about today. Thank you everybody for coming and have a good day.
Hi, so I grew up in coastal Wairarapa and I enjoyed playing in the clear, stony bottom creeks and rivers that characterise that area. So when I moved to ADRIAN, the river didn't look as inviting. So I'm keen to understand what can happen, what can be done for these the rivers in our area, acknowledging that they are geologically different from what you get in the Wairarapa. One of the great things about ADRIAN is the stands of kites, they're major. So on the farm we've planted trees, fenced the waterways and sought to understand our farm. It's also made financial sense. The benefits we've got is that fencing off the areas that are the riparian areas and the stands of native bush, where we finished, has more clearly defined the farmable areas. So stock don't die in drains in the swampy areas. Fertiliser goes only on the productive areas that we want to farm. We don't need to pay for our drains to be cleaned. And there's more shelter and shade for stock. It's helped cool the waterways and provided a cooler environment, which is nicer to live in and nicer to work in. It's meant more troughs, which has meant better quality stock water. I like bird corridors. For me, that's about just enjoying your farm. But the key for us has meant that by fencing off the waterways, it's been easier to move stock. It's quicker, it's more efficient, and it's easier to put up the electric fencing. So when Mark goes away and I'm doing the farm work, I can do it quickly and efficiently. What I also like about sheep and beef farming is that there are lots of ways of doing it. You can do it your own style. We have tried a number of different ways. What we've come back to is doing a really simple system. That's what has worked for us, and it's meant that we've had more time to do the other things that we want to do off farm. So finally, I'd just like to thank all the sponsors for making the Balanced Farm Environment Awards possible, and also thanks to Matt and his Waikato team for the trust, for their fantastic organisation and their support of the judges. It's, so far it's been a great journey, so thank you very much. Thank you.
So how we get on? Can you hear me now? Violet, do you want to turn that up a bit?
Yes, it is on.
Anyway, so we've got a backup sound system, that's why. So we'll try and get that sorted throughout the day. So I'm just going to run just a little video clip about the farm and that today, and then we've got a couple of formalities before we're all going to jump on the bus and we'll head out. So.
Mark and Felicity Brough, PAERUA. Native birds have returned and water quality has improved since the Broughs took over PAERUA about 20 years ago, reflecting their respective land, animals, soil and water. Land use is carefully matched to land capability, and the couple is embracing upcoming regulatory changes. Mark and Felicity entered the Balanced Farm Environment Awards to demonstrate that it's not hard to be an environmental farmer and how enjoyable the end product is. The Waitomo sheep and beef breeding and store fattening farm runs about 170 weaner bulls and steer calves and 2,150 sheep. The judges praised the Broughs for skillfully matching land use to land capability. They were also impressed with grazing management that maintains pasture cover and minimises the risk to soils. Native birds, fish and invertebrates are flourishing on the property thanks to extensive planting around streams and ponds and significant fencing of wetlands and drains. The judges commended an innovative biosecurity map that indicates where significant species live. 2 large dams with wetland areas have been created, and the couple is planning to fence off significant blocks of mature native bush. Poplar poles control erosion, almost all paddocks have water troughs, and beehives encourage clover growth. The judges were impressed with how the Broughs are approaching upcoming regulatory changes such as freshwater standards, embracing them as a positive step for both themselves and the farm. Mark and Felicity have strong off-farm connections, both locally and nationally, and are keen to help other farmers learn from their successes as well as their failures. As they strive to be successful and profitable environmental farmers, the Broughs are very focused on preserving the precious resources that make farming possible, soil and water. Their focus on water was noted by the judges, who said a stream cutting through the property runs clear, even after rainfall. Judges' comments. An innovative biosecurity map indicates where significant species live. Mark and Felicity are heavily involved in their community, both locally and nationally. Land use is carefully matched to land capability on the property. PAERUA is a credit to the hard work of this couple.
So yeah, it's one thing seeing it on a big screen, but it's another thing getting out and experiencing. And the thing about when you develop a really special farm environment is there's so much to see and feel and experience. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to get you out and about. So next up, before we cover up a few formalities, I'd like to welcome up Martin Evatt here to welcome you all on behalf of our sponsors today. So welcome, Martin.
Thank you, Matt. Yes, we're all looking forward to get out on the farm, so we'll make this short and sweet, but someone's got to pay for the coffee and scones, and Balance Agri-Nutrients obviously being a key sponsor, but there's a family of sponsors that are responsible for putting this event together year on year, and they include Bailey's Real Estate, Waikato Regional Council, Dairy NZ, Norwood, Beef and Lamb, Sinlay, Waterforce, Hill Laboratory, sorry Fiona, I didn't bump you up the list, I'm just sticking to the script, Massey University, Waikato River Authority and Waikato Farmers Trust. Now, I haven't officially met you, Mark, but your brother Paul says he's taught you everything you know when it comes to farming, so I'm looking forward to seeing the fruits of his labour. I can't wait to see the farm actually, so we won't muck around any longer and we'll get into it. Thank you very much. There's plenty of talented people around here today, including our chairman, Duncan Cole, so make sure you sidle up to them, ask them some tough questions throughout the day. And in fact, the room's supercharged with all sorts of influences, so take the opportunity today not just to look at the farm, but to talk to people and introduce you to people, and you'll learn heaps. Thank you.
So next up, and on behalf of, is that working? So we're going to sort the sound system as we go. It's a bit of work in progress, obviously. But next up, on behalf of the Waikato Regional Council, and I'd like to welcome up Bridge Litruck to welcome you all here today. So put your hands together for Fred.
Put your hands together for my bro over here. Sorry, Mark. Felicity. But as one of your regional councillors, I've been given a duty to read a script, and it's only 3 or 4 pages, so just read that. I do want to point out that our chair puts in his apologies, Russ Runnington. He's busy trying to sort out other work issues. And one of your constituent councillor, Andrew McPherson. And we have got another councillor in the room who is your constituent councillor, Stu Nebine. I believe. I haven't seen him yet. Oh, he's over here. Yeah, there he is. And I'd like to thank all our regional council staff as well, who's put a lot of work into actually putting this event together, including our judge, Bala, who also puts a lot of work into it. But what I'm really proud to see is the number of farmers and people in this room. You're all to be congratulated, because obviously you've got the time to put aside to actually take this issue seriously. But before I commend you all, I do really want to commend the Supreme winner, both Mark and Felicity, because they are real ambassadors for our region. And without that type of ambassador, land ambassador, farming ambassadors, we really haven't got much of a marketing image. And we base this, for our region to show our worth to the rest of the world. So as far as our economy goes, we need landowners like Mark. And as far as our biodiversity goes, and our in-stream value goes, and our whitebait goes, we need people like Mark. So, without further ado, I really want to thank you, and thank Felicity, and thank all of you guys for turning up. Really appreciate it. And I hope that you will all enter into the Farm Environment Awards, because the Farm Environment Awards, I'm sorry, I'm going to extend a little bit more, because I didn't acknowledge the people that have put this together. That this trust now has been adopted nationally. So again, this little trust here has really led the way in looking at our whole country and what it's expanded into. So they'll probably get elbowed completely out of the picture if you let them. If you let the National Trust do that. So I just, support our locals, support our local trust, and support our regional council. Thank you.
Alright, so a couple of formalities. Now we're going to head out to farm very, very soon. We want to be out there not long after 1:30, so we're going to get everyone moving. And the way we're going to do that is we want a carpool. We've got a big crowd, and the parking out on farm is kind of average. Is that a fair comment? Yeah. And so what we want to do is we want a carpool, right? So the bus is going to lead. We'll probably put Mark and Felicity at the front. They can be the lead car. And then we'll have the bus just behind them. But we want to fill the bus up. So there's probably about 10 to 15 seats sitting on the bus that are empty at the moment. So if you have the ability to, please jump on the bus. And then what we want to do is line the cars up behind the bus. And we want the cars full way. We want a minimum of 3 people in each car if that's possible, please. just to minimise the traffic out on farm. And we'll convoy it, but we've got to be conscious of other people on the road at the same time. Now, when we're out on farm today, Mark, Felicity, what do we have to be careful of? What do we have to think about?
I'll turn the electric fence across.
So the electric fences are off. I want you to be conscious. So we've got a 1.5 kilometre walk today. We've got 3 stops along that walk. So the first stop is at the top of the hill. So that's probably the hardest walk, and it's on relatively uneven terrain, right? So if you're a little bit unsure on your feet, just assess that when you're out there and make a call. So we'll probably be up the top of the hill for about half an hour, and then we'll come back down, and then the rest of the day we'll be on the flats, which is nice, easy access. The other thing that I'd like to acknowledge is Norwood Farm Machinery. They're one of our national sponsors, so they've brought out a side-by-side so they can cart 4 to 6 people up to the top of the flats where we're going to go. So if you are genuinely unsure on your feet, then feel free to jump on that, and they can chauffeur you around today. That's what they're here for, so make the most of that. The other thing that Mark and Felicity are really big on is animal welfare, and so they want everyone to sanitise their boots before they come onto the farm. So on the bus, when you're heading out, whoever's on the bus, we're going to have a whole lot of these foot sanitiser bottles. So make sure you spray your boots, and then when you get out to the farm, you do need to go through the main gate, and there'll be a boot station there to clean your boots on your way in. So that is important for them. They run a pretty closed loop system, and they're really conscious of keeping their animals healthy and well. So please go out of your way to do that. Finally, a couple of acknowledgements here. I'd like to welcome Barbara Kuriga, the MP for the Taranaki King Country region, and her husband Lewis. Sorry. So welcome. Really good to have you guys here. We really appreciate you guys turning up to support us today. And welcome to all other dignitaries and councillors. So I actually think that's us for the formalities. So if you had another 10 years on this farm, what do you think this landscape might look like in 10 years' time?
Oh, we're about halfway there, I suppose. What we're doing now is we're concentrating on putting poplar poles in, and so the boundary is the road and the bush. We go right up to the bush and right around. We only have one sheep and beef neighbour and one or two dairy neighbours, but yeah, so we've papa soil and miro ash, so it's with a high rainfall you've just got to be very careful.
So I read some stats. I reckon the rainfall up this area is about 1700, so that's not excessively more than central Waikato, but I think it's the contour that's the difference, right?
It's the contour, yeah.
It's the class of the land.
Yeah.
So where did you begin? When you started working in this wetland, we're looking at this wetland down here. Where did you start? What did you do? How did you do it?
Well, we took advice from ADRIAN JEPSON for Waikato Regional Council, and he said start where you can see it. So every day you drive past it and you think, shit, that looks nice, and rather than starting at the back of the farm and just a few pig owners will see it, you better to do it where you can see it and really enjoy it. Yeah, so we did start a couple of smaller blocks in the middle of the farm, but then we thought, we want to enjoy the bird life and the biodiversity in the water and things like that.
Also, if you're driving past it and you can see the blackberry growing. So you can catch that quickly, so that's another advantage. Oh, that's the other advantage of having it. So you can enjoy the bird life and that sort of thing, but you can also monitor what's going on, and that's important as well.
So in a second we're going to hear from ADRIAN JEPSON, but I'm interested to know in the split of work, like how much work did you do, who paid for it, and how long did it take?
Oh, we did all the work. We started getting funding from Regional Council at 30%. If you get funding at 50%, you do all the work yourself. It doesn't cost you anything. So, you know, funding is very important, and it's a hell of a bonus, makes a big difference to your bottom line. But, yeah, no, it's something we really enjoy.
So I'm quite interested in your decision making here, because I mean you've got a credible result. It looks really good. In fact it's quite stunning within the landscape. Who was the brains behind it? Was it yourselves outright, or did you bring people on board? And how did you go about selecting people to get involved and associated with yourselves?
Yeah, I'll probably have to get a little bit of credit. There's a crusty old farmer up the Mangataki who's done a bit, and so I've sort of looked at him and looked what he'd done, and he's also got rid of a few Japanese walnuts. So thanks, Barry, for your advice and your help. I think it's just going to days like this and thinking, actually I could do that on my little piece of land, or I could start doing that. But I think once you make a start, it sort of grows on you, and you think, oh, I could do it over here now, you know. But it is a long-term plan, a long-term goal.
And there I was, I didn't think you were listening.
All right, so we've got Adrian up here. Now, Adrian, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're a catchment manager officer with the Waikato Regional Council.
Yep.
And do you want to just talk about who you are and how you come to be here and what's your association with the farm?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Good to see a couple hundred sets of eyes looking at Mark's farm. And thanks, Mark and Felicity, for getting everyone out here. I'm a catchment management officer for the Waikato Regional Council, and there's a lot of familiar faces here. Most of you do exceptional work out there. We started engaging with Mark Felicity around about 2006, I think, was the first conversation that we had. Mark and Felicity, Barry Tatham, hats off. Barry's been a leading light in the native planting restoration, riparian type management, and has a avid hate for Japanese walnut. This project hasn't happened overnight. Mark and Felicity have done a fair bit of planning. They did start close to home, and they kept it quite simple. You don't want to go big and large with a really complex planting. It's not you're not working for a landscape company. You're just keeping it simple and using local knowledge, local nurseries, local contractors, whatever you want. And as I said, do your first plantings if you can, close to the road, close to your house, close to your dairy shed, whatever, somewhere where you're going to see it regularly, so you can keep an eye on it, because you will need to keep an eye on it. You are going to get some weeds, and there is going to be some failures through frost, drought, pest, whatever. A small wetland like this is ideal to start on, because it's manageable, it's a complete unit. You can whack a fence around it, you can put your plants in, and that's it there. But if you start on a large stream and you do shitloads of it, it's going to take all of your time to maintain it. So if you start on one spot, get it going, get encouraged by your successes, and then track on further places on your farm and get those underway. As far as species selection goes, just grab a handful. Don't get 30 or 40 different species and make a pig of yourself, because you're just going to give yourself a headache. So the basic species like cabbage tree, which you can see growing well down there, flaxes, manuka, toi, some of those carrots, grasses around the edges, and those 5 species. And we got Fred Litchmark, he's a bit of an expert on native plants, he'll probably back us up, hopefully. And those species, they'll do well down here, they'll require very little maintenance, and you'll get good bang for your buck. And after a couple of 3 years, you won't need to have a lot of maintenance for those species. As far as poplar poles go, Mark and Felicity are getting stuck into those. Some of this country, as you know, for those farmers around here, you've got a lot of papa rock and that myra ash. It's pretty sensitive stuff. Poplar poles do a wonderful job, and if you can look in the background over there, you'll see there's those green, those sleeves sticking up. They're poplar poles planted in areas that have got a bit of a slump or a bit of exposed soil. They're really easy to plant. they just take a little sweat. But once they get their roots in, they do a wonderful job of holding the soil together. And they also do supply some shade to your stock. And if things get tough in a drought, you can whop them down, and the stock love eating them. They're readily available. I say readily, they're quite hard to get. There's quite a lot of demand for poplar poles as people are becoming more aware of soil conservation. They're quite hard to get hold of, but we're doing our best to keep a good supply up through various nurseries around the region. I think that's about all I want to say up here at this stage, mate. You got any?
The only probably thing you do have to watch is we spray for thistles. So, you know, you've got to have a good helicopter pilot, keep well back. Poplar poles aren't as bad because they've lost their leaves in August when we spray for thistles. But certainly native plants around waterways will all get wiped out if you don't have the day right, or the helicopter pilot gets a bit slack. Yeah.
Adrian, talk about funding.
Sorry.
The question was what type of poplar poles seem to be working best here. Mark, I think we've provided kawa for the majority of the plantings on here. Kawa are quite a hardy variety of poplar. They don't grow excessively large. Some of these trees that you do see, especially around the King Country, the poplar poles are planted by the Valley Authority years ago. A lot of them were Chinese poplar unionensis, which is a quite a large, heavy branched tree, and fall apart at about age 35, and they've created quite a mess throughout the landscape. But the new varieties of kawa poplar that are getting bred have been bred specifically so they don't create a big canopy, they don't fall apart as readily, and they have a more vigorous rooting structure, so they're quite an effective tool. We do have funding for poplar pole planting through the Hill Country Erosion Fund, which is funded through the Ministry of Primary Industries, and that's for the Mokau catchment, Awakino and the Marakopa. So if you do own land in those areas and you want to get some help around planting poplars or just poplar poles in general for erosion control or fencing off native bush, just give us a yell. Just catch up. That's why we're all red shirt today, so you can see who I am and you can tap me on the shoulder. As far as keeping it simple with your plantings, you can go, there's a whole lot of stuff on the market out there for fertiliser and weed mats and stakes and different techniques for spot spraying and blanket spraying, etc, etc. It can get bloody costly, so just keep it simple. Just stick to some basic spot spraying. If you don't want to do spot spraying, just plant them in the grass. But you will probably get a little bit of maintenance going forward, because wherever you put herbicide, it creates great opportunity for weeds to grow. And there's a whole lot of things, weed mat, and there's guards you can put around the tree so the hares don't come and eat them. And the reality is that if you can keep it as simple as you can, you're going to get a reasonable success, and you don't need to go too elaborate with all that other fancy stuff. Some species of plants you'll plant, they might get hammered by frost, but the majority of those 5 species that I named, they're pretty hardy. They'll go okay in this country and won't need a huge amount of maintenance. I think that's me.
So I'm interested, Mark and Felicity, but there's maintenance required, right? So 2, 3, 4 years in from starting, there's maintenance. And every time you start a new project, there's more maintenance. So how far away from being fully tapped out? Because you guys don't have any staff on this farm, right? So it's you guys, you're doing it. How far away from being tapped out are you? Or how much more are you prepared to take on? Who's doing the maintenance?
Mainly Mark does it. I do some. I probably do more blackberry spraying on other parts of the farm. Mark does more of the riparian spraying in the riparian areas. It's just one thing I want to add with Adrian is we quite like in some parts putting a bit of colour in, so that's just to add the interest in terms of the planting. It just makes it interesting, and we have put some exotics in there because we want to, and we think that it's you don't have to be too precious. So if you want to put some other things in there, from our perspective, we think we can. What do you think about that, Adrian?
Yeah, variety's the spice of life, and if you don't have a bit of colour on your farm, it's going to be a bit drab, isn't it? So, not only that too, if you got pin oaks growing down there, they're going to pop out acorns. Ducks love acorns, and it's quite good to have something flapping around in your water. To, a bit of biodiversity, and also they do create a lot of exotic trees. Being deciduous, they do create good shade portions in your planting. And that creates habitat too for other, there's a lot of native seeds in the ground anyway when you fence it off. Even if you did nothing for 20 years, you come back, it'd be chocker full of natives. So really just by planting, you're just accelerating that natural process, and having exotics growing in there, you're going to create a bit of diversity and create a bit of habitat for the natives to grow up under there. One thing you do got to be aware of though with exotics, a lot of them do grow really big, like pine trees, poplar poles. They're really expensive to remove. And when you do remove them, you've got this stump that will quite often rot out really quickly over a sort of 3 to 5 year period, and it can create a bit of a vacuum in it. And if that vacuum is beside a creek, you're going to get some slumpage maybe where that stump was, and then you're going to get a bit of bank erosion, especially if you've got quite a high velocity channel where you've got a lot of water flowing past there. It picks on this rot and stumpage, and then you'll get a scour hole, and then you get some bank erosion, and it's just a pain. One thing about native plants like flaxes, for example, if you plant them too close to a bank, they will slump in after some time. So if you plant your flaxes a bit further back, you're not going to, because if you pick up an old flax that's 20 years old, they weigh, a ton or so it's quite a lot of weight that's going to slump into the stream. It'll block the stream and push water around the back of it and create another scour. So you just try and keep those bigger species away from the edge of the water.
One mistake we made when we first started planting was you drive along the road and you see a few lancewoods or something, you think, shit, I'll grab those and get them before the mower gets and I'll plant them. But hell of a mistake, because they come with their weeds, and a lot of creeper weeds, and so you'd want to always get your trees from a nursery. And just backing up what Adrian said, we had pine trees growing along the side of the creek down there where you'll see, and I just see the banks are starting to fall in a bit. Must be the pine tree roots are starting to rot. We've cut the pine trees and the roots are starting to rot and let the bank go a bit, so another mistake.
We could talk all day about planting because it's quite exciting. As Mark and Felicity said, they started off quite some time ago, 2005, 2006, something like that, and they started off with 1 or 2 bits, and now they're quite enthusiastic about it, and they've done a hell of a lot of planting on this property. And it's quite a common comment that we get from landowners that they started here and there, and now they've done truckloads on their farm, and it really is beneficial not only to the property value, but also they walk around this farm every day, and it's quite a visual thing. It's quite nice to be proud of what you're doing. And also, if you walk back down towards the bus where we were and you have a look at that Pikiatua stream where they've planted up there, it's pretty clean. I'd probably drink that water. So yeah, that is definitely me.
So I'm happy to take sort of 3 or 4 questions before we head back down the hill, but if you just raise your hand and I'll bring the mic over. There's going to be a little bit of back and forwards so that people can hear the question, but down here.
I'll ask Felicity this. Felicity, pest control, what are you doing, as you're shutting up areas? Are you finding you're getting issues with rats and stoats and etc, cats? Yes. Do anything about it?
Waikato Regional Council do a terrific job controlling the possums. We've virtually got no possums. We've had a control targeting cats in particular. Wild cats are really bad. I mean, you might see that the disease cats give to dolphins are one of the demise of the Maui dolphin. So we trap cats. But you're right, all this long grass, it's a haven for rats. We don't have the answer for that. Probably getting rid of the cats is encouraging the rats, so I'm not sure. Hugh could always give you a job getting a few rats if you want.
Well, you don't have a poisoning program going at all?
Not for rats, no.
So no control of rats at the moment, and visually or noticeably, have you noticed the change in the rat population? What are you noticing in that respect?
Oh, I think everybody's got a rat in their ceiling. But yeah, not too bad at this stage, you know. Yeah.
The old fella up the Mangataki, if he's there somewhere. When we talk about fencing off waterways, a lot of farmers, the first thing they say is that the blackberry becomes a real issue. And Barry's got some really awesome thoughts on blackberry, so could we hear those for 2 seconds?
Barry's just lazy.
Sorry, who's the old fella from up the right?
And
Barry Tathan.
Right.
Who are you, Barry, and what do you know?
F4.
Just answer the first question.
The blackberry, around patches of native bush that you're putting the fence around, don't do anything, let it grow. Yeah. The trees will self-seed. You're giving a nest for the seeds to grow. If you sprayed the blackberry, we're killing all the regeneration. All we do is go around very, very light application round to keep off the electric fence, or there's a wire on it. Round the rivers, I really haven't got an answer to that. Because some of the rivers are pretty inaccessible for spraying blackberry, and you've got to get rid of the goat so that the blackberry comes back. In time, the native bush will take over, but it's going to take 20 or 30 years.
David or somebody was asking about sleeves.
Okay. Your poplar poles are relatively small at this stage, and they haven't yet got trunks big enough to burst their sleeves. We put ours in 5 years ago, and they're bursting their sleeves, and then the stock are nibbling the bark of them, and some of them are not doing so well. So is there a retrofit bigger sleeve? You can't thread it down the top anymore because you've got all the canopy. So how do you protect the bark of a poplar that's burst its sleeve?
We planted poplar poles over in those hills there, and yeah, you're right, you've got to be really careful. But what we've done, again, took advice off that old fella over there, and we took the sleeves off in summer when the bark is quite hard, and then leave it for another month before you put cattle in to really let it harden up. But yeah, it's the only thing we can think of. But the plastic sleeves are a bit of a bugger. You have to go back and pick them up after a couple of years.
So sorry, just out of interest, how long ago did you start? How many have you planted, and how many do you reckon you've lost?
We get about 90% success on the native trees and about 80 on the poplar poles, and so the oldest poplar poles are probably about 8-10 years old now. Yeah. Dairy grades are the worst for poplar poles. Yeah, they seem to be really inquisitive, and whereas beef cattle aren't as bad.
Any more?
We were talking about avoiding big trees on stream edges. Does that include native trees like kahikatea, totara?
Conifers.
The question was, big trees like kahikatea and totara, should they be planted around waterways? Probably more so in wetlands. I would be putting kahikatea in wetlands and keeping the stream edge to smaller species. Yeah.
One important point there is, I would not plant any conifers on riparian margins because of two reasons. One, they drop all those cones, and very important point is they don't allow anything to grow underneath. So land becomes bare, and once land becomes bare, all problems start there. So we need to be careful with selection of, that's why I always tell, planting or not just planting the trees or whatever species that you select what is suitable.
All right, so we're just about ready to move on. We've got one last question from Josh over here, and then we're going to move on. So Josh, what have you got?
You say you run a pretty simple system. how has planting, I guess, affected the whole farm system in terms of running the animals, and have you had to put up extra fences to protect areas you've planted?
Yeah, no, good question. We've done about 9 kilometres of riparian fencing at 5-wire electric. Plus, I would suggest another 3 or 4 kilometres fencing off native bush, retiring native bush. But it has made it so much easier. I spend quite a bit of time off farm, so Felicity's always shifting the brakes. So instead of having to put the brake down in the electric wire down into the creek, just hook it straight onto the wire. Just makes it so much simpler. Really good for bulk spreader, things like that. You can see the edge of the drain, no food's going in the drain, those sort of things.
All right, so where are we going to head to next, Mark?
It's going past that cottonwood, poplar or whatever it is.
We're just going to go past, straight down the hill there, around the side of this first knob here on the left-hand side, and just follow the track down onto the flats.